welcome along to the Panto podcast. Twice in one weekend? That can't be right, can it? Wow, it's lockdown after all. My guest for this week's episode is Wyn Calvin, the Welsh Prince of Laughter. Recorded a week before his 95th birthday, Wyn tells me how he got started in the business. He shares some of his wonderful stories and gives lots of advice for future performers. So please, sit back and enjoy the latest Panto podcast. My guest for today's Panto podcast is legend of the pantomime and theatre world, Wyn Calvin. Hello, Wyn.
And a very good whatever time of day it is to you now.
You're looking very well, very sprightly.
You're very kind and you exaggerate in the most delightful way.
So, another big birthday coming up.
Yeah.
95.
Last year, do you know I had a birthday every year?
Did you?
Oh, and last year I had a lot on my birthday, a lot of messages, very kind messages on the phone from all over the place, even from Spain, saying happy birthday. And I said to one of them, how did you know? He said, well, you're in the birthdays column of the Times today. And he said, are you really 94? And I said, well, that's reasonably accurate for the Times. And he said, well, did you ever meet Elvis? I said, no. He said, well, it won't be long now.
What?
Which gave me a laugh.
What's the secret then?
What of?
Your good health. Your life, have you?
I've never drunk a pint of beer in my life. I've never drunk a spirit in my life. But I do enjoy wine related to food. And wine as the complement to food I enjoy. But that's the extent of my boozing.
You're very active as well over the years in pantomime. Lots and lots of hard work.
Yes, pantomime was hard work, particularly playing dame, and I used to do 10 changes at each performance, and performances were twice daily. And I used to say I work much harder in the dressing room than I do on the green. But it's, yes, it was hard work, physically, pantomime, twice daily. And these days I look back on it and I think, twice daily, 10 changes at each performance, 6 days a week, twice daily, and running as we used to from December into March and April. I look back on it and I think, you're in the theatre from noon until, and you're not out until 11 o'clock is in the evening, etc. It was a form of imprisonment.
Did it ever feel like that?
It was a joy. Pantomime was always a joy, because there's nothing more joyous in life than hearing a theatre full of people laughing. That is a great joy and a lasting experience.
Were you a funny child then?
Was I a what child?
A funny child.
Funny child.
Did you like making people laugh when you were little?
Yes. But my first experience of pantomime, I was taken to a pantomime here in Cardiff. I would have been about 7 or 8, I suppose, taken by my father. And I'm sitting in the circle and looking down on this world of music, amusement, movement, colour, and thinking, that's the world that I want to be part of. Not this rotten world and this awful school I'm going to. That's the world I want to be part of. And I suppose I was there for about 7, and it was my road to Damascus. that's the world I want to be part of.
Do you remember what the performance was?
It was a pantomime. I don't remember what the subject was. Would have been the subject I have done most with was Aladdin and playing Twanky. And one day I was sitting here where we are sitting now. Phone went. I picked up the phone and the voice said, "Mr. Calvin." I said, "Yes." He said, "Oh, Ian McKellen here." And I said, "Sir Ian?" And he said, "Well, more or less, yes." He said, "I have been invited to play pantomime." He said, "which I've never done. Now, I'm talking to a Hollywood great and one of our finest actors." But he said, "I'm going to play Widow Twanky in the West End, and I'm told that you are the principal Widow Twanky in the country. Would you be available and free to give me some guidance about playing the role?" And I said, "Sir Ian, I'd do that with the greatest pleasure if our diaries can coincide. Let's meet up sometime. You're living in London. Do you know Gray's Inn Road?" He said, "Just round the corner for me." I said, "Well, we could meet up in the Water Rats Lodge." He said, "That would be a great privilege." And I thought, this is one of our greatest actors. This is a great Hollywood name, but he has that opinion of variety, that world of entertainment from which the Water Rats have developed over 150 years. And that is an interesting insight into his interest, wide interest in entertainment, that he should have that impression that it would be a privilege to be chatted to in the Water Rats Lodge.
What kind of things then did you give him guidance when you met him?
Well, he remembers, and of course he's done this wonderful tour of 80 theatres on his 80th birthday or thereabouts. And the tour was his one-man chat about his career, and one section of that he devotes to having done pantomime, and mentions that he had received guidance and some background on playing Widow Twanky from what he called the number one Widow Twanky in the country, the Welsh Prince of Laughter. And he tells the story that the first bit of guidance that I gave him in playing Dame in the bleak midwinter: keep your padded bra on the radiator overnight. Because putting a cold bra on in midwinter in a dressing room.
Was he a good student?
Oh, excellent. He's a very, very talented man, but a man with very wide experience and wide knowledge. Yeah, lovely fella.
You said you went to pantomime when you were little, and that started you on your career path. Did you go and see many other variety acts back then?
Did I remember?
Did you go and see many other variety acts back then?
Yes, I always was fascinated by the variety theatre of the time, that world of twice nightly variety. that most theatres in the country did at some time in the year, twice nightly variety, using a vast array of acts, of variety acts, and many of whom, of course, would then go into pantomime at Christmas. But we were very, very fortunate to have in this country that wide selection of variety acts, of clever acts, of performers in that world that followed music hall.
Any that made any impressions on you?
Oh, hundreds, dozens, all of them. All of them. I was intrigued by anyone who had the ability to entertain an audience in some way, either comedy or musically or physically. Yes, it impressed me very much that people could keep a theatre full of punters, could keep them interested and entertained.
How did you start then to pursue a career on the stage?
I had served in the army during the war, and just after the invasion, our invasion of northern France, I was invalided out with a heart problem and saw the medical report on my condition of this heart, which said possible length of life 6 months. Well, it's been a long 6 months. And I thought, well, if I can't join them, I want to entertain them. So I got a job with ENSA, E-N-S-A, every night something atrocious. And ENSA was the great Forces Entertainment organization. And so I was in this review, an ENSA review, and we played in various parts of the South. We played at Air Force bases, Army bases, etc., in the south of England. And then we were told that we were going to go over to France, Belgium, newly liberated Holland, and the war was still raging, and we'd have to be in uniform in case we were taken prisoner, in which case we would be treated as military. But if we were in mufti, in civilian clothing, we would be treated as spies and shot. And the day that I was put into that pseudo-military ENSA uniform, Hitler committed suicide. So, you see, he knew that I was coming over there.
So after the war then, to pursue this
career?
I
did 5 years of weekly rep. Now, how do you explain that to youngsters today? They say impossible. No, weekly rep. Different play every week. Each day you were rehearsing rehearsing next week's play. You were rehearsing it during the day, but playing this week's play at night. And that went on for about 5 years in various parts of the country. But weekly rep was prevalent right around the coast, the whole of the country, in theatres throughout the country. And a different play every week. And I think in the years I must have played over 250 different roles in rep.
Goodness me.
And we had a producer in one of the seasons I did. And I did seasons in Manchester, Oldham, as far north as Motherwell, and as far south as Torquay. But in one season in St Anne's-on-Sea in Lancashire, we had a producer who on a Tuesday night, never a Monday night, a Monday night was always a first night in weekly rep. But on a Tuesday night, he would go and stand at the back of the stalls, and if there was a bit of dialogue that he didn't hear, he used to yell, "Are you keeping it a secret?" And if there was the danger of that voice coming from the back of the stalls, you made sure that yours was heard at the back of the circle, but without shouting. Natural projection of the voice, but not shouting. Very valuable early lesson for an actor or a performer of any sort. But then I discovered that the more dramatic and the more romantic the roles that I played, the bigger the laughs I seemed to get. So it dawned on me that with a face and a voice like mine, it had to be comedy.
What was the first comedic role then that you played? Because you started off as comic, didn't you, in Pantomime?
Yes, well, I'd been a comic in that review that right at the beginning, in that review that in Enser. So I'd always been inclined to be amused by performing. I always felt the greatest sound in the world is not the sound of music, it's the sound of laughter.
You can't control your laughter, can you? Trying to stifle a laugh is a terrible thing to try and do.
You're speaking personally.
Yes, for me, yeah. I find it very... If you're in a situation where you want to laugh and you try and hold it in, or you start corpsing, other people are laughing, it becomes contagious.
True. Yeah, true.
And it's a natural reaction. It's you can't describe what that does to the body. There's nothing else that makes you feel that way. And as a person who loves and adores comedy and comedians, people who have that gift of giving laughter, there's no better feeling than being in a room of other people laughing, and if you're not laughing, you will be by the end.
It's a social reaction. We laugh much more when we're with others than we do when we're by ourselves. It is a social reaction.
Do you like watching the audiences when you're not performing?
Yeah. Involvement with the audience, I think, for a comic is essential. Yes, involvement with them and being aware of them and reacting to them as they react to you.
You can turn it up, turn it down.
Yes.
Ride the waves, kind of.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you'll get seasick in no time.
Who were your companions then in the Enser days?
There was a comic, and then and I was feeding the comic, and the rest of the cast were girls, singers and dancers, which was typical of a revue in those days.
And do you remember the subject matter that you were touching upon then?
Oh, Didn't have one.
No, just
No, just general. That was comedy.
Who then were your influences in comedy?
Radio, of course, was the greatest purveyor of talent. And radio used the variety world a great deal. And because I've always said that radio created an appetite for those performers from the variety world. And people then wanted to, liking performers, comedy performers particularly, on radio, wanted to see them when they appeared locally. And radio filled theatres. Television later emptied them. Now, there's a saddening thought for you.
Did you notice that, though, when you were performing, when the theatres started not quite being capacity and dwindling audiences?
I noticed it particularly with summer shows, because I did 4 seasons as a top of the bill in the Central Pier in Blackpool. Now, Blackpool was the mecca of light entertainment. It had more light entertainment shows than the West End of London in those days, and I was there in the 70s and 80s. Now, at that time, there were 8 or 10 big, twice nightly summer shows in Blackpool. Now there's not one. But the thing that has been blamed for that became the popularity of sunshine summer shows or sunshine holidays, which became very popular through the 60s, but particularly in the 70s and 80s, which has lessened to a great extent the attraction of our resorts in this country and therefore of the summer shows that existed. There's not one summer show in Blackpool now.
With everything that's been happening, we might see a resurgence. You never know.
Oh, yes, please. Would you arrange it, please? Do your best.
We'll try. We'll try. Any producers listening? Producers listen to this.
Oh, you try. I know how trying you can be.
Thanks, Win. Going back to pantomime then, what was the first panto you performed in?
1947 in Reading, at the Palace Theatre in Reading. That was the first. The following year I was at Swansea, and I was playing the Baron in Cinderella, and the Cinderella was played by Joan Laurie, who was the daughter of Gladys Morgan. Now, Gladys Morgan was a huge radio success, wonderful, and it was her laugh that made her so popular, because she had a laugh that would create an even bigger laugh from the audience. But Gladys was playing one of the ugly sisters, and Joan, her daughter, was playing Cinderella, which of course was her her sister. That was one of the first pantomimes that I remember with special affection. Playing pantomime was a joy I look back on. And remember so many names to which I've been mother. It's almost impossible to recall all of them. Because at first I wasn't playing dame. I didn't want to play dame. I played Buttons and Idle Jack and Simple Simon, etc. And Humpty Dumpty particularly. I had a number of years playing Humpty Dumpty with an excellent pantomime that was written for Harry Seacombe, who played it in the West End. And then it went into the provinces, in the principal pantomime theatres in the provinces, Manchester, Oldham, Nottingham, Leeds, Liverpool, Bristol, etc. And so as Humpty Dumpty, I made quite an impact. It was a good pantomime because it was well written for a pantomime story. Humpty was on the wall in Happy Land. Nothing went wrong in this land while the egg was on the wall. And the egg comes off the wall, breaks, and this Humpty Dumpty comes out of it, and everything seems to be going wrong. Now, it was a very clever script because the principal boy was Tommy Tucker. So there was a reason for the principal boy to sing, because Tommy Tucker sang for his supper. And the principal girl was Mistress Mary, and she was engaged to Tommy Tucker, but then when this thing comes off the wall that everybody hated, she decides to be the friend of Humpty Dumpty. So Mary was quite contrary. And this was so the King and Queen of Hearts. The Queen of Hearts, she made some tarts. So there was a reason for the pastry-making scene in the pantomime, etc. It was a very cleverly contrived script for a pantomime. And I did it for 6 years in various parts of the country. And at Bristol was the last time I did it, and there were the Seekers. And the Seekers and Ted Rogers. And Tom Arnold, who was the king of pantomime producers at the time, Tom Arnold said, "Next year I want you in skirts." Now, being in skirts was playing dame. And I said, "Oh no, Tom, I couldn't play dame. I don't feel feminine." And he said, "That's why you'll make a good dame. Because a good pantomime dame should never be other than a fella in costume. That is why it's amusing to children. You'll make a good pantomime dame by not trying. You'll be amusing by attempting to be feminine and failing. That's funny." And so that is how I went from playing the male comedy roles in pantomime to getting this reputation, particularly with Humpty Dumpty, with Widow Twanky. And it was I was playing it at Coventry. And on the Sunday there was to be a charity performance with names coming in to the theatre for the Sunday performance, when the pantomime wasn't on, of course. And in this, one of the guests in that was going to be Sir Donald Wolfett, who was then the last of the great Shakespearean actor-managers. A wonderful actor with a tremendous voice, etc. And I said, let him have my dressing room. I'll clear it and leave it for him so that he can make a cup of tea or so with his wife Rosalind Iden. Let Sir Donald and Lady Rosalind have my dressing room, and I'll make it comfortable for them. During the afternoon, when they were doing the rehearsal, the run-through, I went down to the theatre and went to my dressing room to find that Sir Donald was in it, and on the wardrobe, fingering and looking at my costumes. And he said, "Wynne, I am very jealous of you." I said, "Jealous of me, Sir Donald?" "Yes. You are playing the one classical role that I wanted to play and never did." I said, "Widow Twanky, Sir Donald." "Yes." British lady living in China and widowed with 2 recalcitrant sons, Aladdin and Idlejack, or whatever it was, trying to bring up these 2 lads as a widow by having to take in dirty washing, etc., etc., and analysing the role of Widow Twanky that hadn't even occurred to me, and I was playing the silly bitch. But that was Donald Wolfett. An indication of how widespread is the appeal of pantomime, even with great classical performers who respect it as a special means of entertainment that has lasted for 150 years at least in its present form in this country. In this country only, pantomime appears nowhere else. No other country puts on a pantomime. A few have tried it. They tried it in Canada, they tried it in Australia, but it never caught on. It has remained so important in Britain, and the financial basis for the year of most theatres that put on pantomime, it's the principal input, cash input into a theatre's treasury in the year. But no other country tries it or has succeeded with it.
When Sir Donald told you about this different way of looking at Widow Twanky, did that make you look at Widow Twanky any differently?
Not really.
You just played it as is.
Well, exactly, yes. I knew where the laughs were, and never mind the history. Go for the giggles.
How did you go for the look then?
Makeup. Have you heard of that?
I need it, don't I?
Yes, the makeup. The makeup of the dames. Very important. it is an exaggeration of the female makeup, of course. And I could walk out of the theatre past people at the stage door after a performance and be quite unrecognised, because I didn't look anything like the character that I was playing inside the theatre. In fact, I was coming out of the theatre in Nottingham when I was mother to Frank Bruno, wonderful character, Frank, bless his heart. And there was always a lot of people at the stage door waiting for him to come out. And I could come out and walk through them. They wouldn't have the vaguest idea what I was. But a kid, I think, recognised my voice and said, "Oh, it's the dame." And with a programme said, "Oh, could I have your autograph, please?" So she handed me her programme. And I said, "What's your name, darling?" She said, "Avril." So I signed this programme with appropriate greetings to Avril and the autograph, gave it back to her. She looked at it and threw it on the floor and screamed. And her mother said, "What's the matter?" She said, "He scribbled all over my programme." Now, if you know my handwriting, that is fairly accurate.
What was it like then working with Frank? Because I heard stories that he asked you to kind of boss him around.
Oh, yes, he said he was one of the toughest men in the world, Frank Bruno. And he said, "Now you push me around. When you push me around, you show me how. You show me how. You push me." I thought, me pushing him around? I would finish up as cornflakes. He was.
Was he a
but
good
he
student?
he was so keen to get it right, and he did. He was very funny. Yeah, and a lovely fellow.
Who have been your favourite children then in pantomime?
Favourite children in pantomime?
As Widow Twanky, you've had plenty of children over the years, haven't you?
Yeah. Yes, I've been mother to a few. Cilla Black, Harry Worth, Des O'Connor, Craig Douglas, Edmund Hockridge, the Two Terrible Winters, Mike and Bernie, Les Dawson. Les used to stand, he did his first pantomime in Leeds, the first time he did pantomime, and he used to stand in the wings watching me. And he said one day, "When I could never do what you're doing, play dame." I said, "Les, you could, because you got some of the attributes of one of the greatest ever dame performers, Norman Evans, with his Over the Garden Wall. You've got the same accent, you've got the same timing, you've got the same appearance and ability that he had. You could make a great dame." And he started thinking about that and trying to find film or whatever of Norman Evans to see who this fellow was that I was talking about. And of course from that came that wonderful double act that he did purely for commercials eventually, but he did with the two of them as dames. Now you remember the name.
Roy Barraclough.
Roy, exactly. The two of them were.
Sissy and Ada.
Yes, true. I'm glad you remember. I find it very difficult remembering names. I had the great joy of involving when I was king rat, of involving into the water rats as the baby rat. You see a photograph of him up there. Do you recognize him? One of the greatest.
Mr. Hope.
Bob Hope. And he was 88 when we made him the baby rat. And he told me what are the 4 stages in the aging of a man. The first stage is when he can't remember names. The second stage is when he can't remember the names of people he knows. The third stage is when he forgets to zip up after he's finished. And the fourth stage is when he forgets to zip down before he starts. And with that thought for a moment, I'm going to leave you. But I'll be back. Don't go away. You were asking some of those that I'd been mother to, and I see, remembering here, Britt Eklund, Ken Dodd, Bradley Walsh, Mr. T from the A-Team, Frank Bruno, Sue Pollard, Cannon and Ball, Ken Dodd, several times. Ken, we did a tribute to Ken Dodd, tribute lunch, for his 90th birthday and his knighthood. And I said at the time, I referred to him as the patron saint of taxpayers. But I said that I'd been his mother 3 times. The last time was at Manchester Palace, where we had kids coming to see the pantomime aged 3.5. They were 5 when they got home. And Ken knew that I used to do that as a gag, and he loved it, because he loved this reputation that he had of being a long stayer as a performer. But about a month before he died, I was having another long chat with him on the phone, as we did, and I said, we talked about the 50 years that we'd known each other and of experiences and the changes in show business over 50 years. And I said, Ken, we have both been very lucky. And he said, no, Win, I must contradict you. We have not been lucky. We have been blessed, and that is much deeper than luck. And I thought, oh, bless his heart, the philosopher remains.
He used to dissect the jokes as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he was a highly intelligent and knowledgeable man, a very, very well-read man, a very wide character, and a delightful pal. His interest was always in you, not in me. Yeah, a great character. One of those that I feel it has been a great privilege to have known and been friendly with. And I feel that about so many people. It has been a privilege to know and work with.
So many lovely names that you've worked with over the years. Not just the people who've played your children, but other performers in pantomime, directors, producers.
Yeah. And most of them existed having had to put up with me.
Who gave you the nickname then, the Welsh Prince of Laughter?
The story goes back a long way to Prince Charles becoming the Prince of Wales. When he became Prince of Wales, I had used the expression somebody had given me before, the Clown Prince of Wales. And I thought, I can't use that expression now that we have a Prince of Wales. And I said to Paolo, journalist, I'll have to drop it. I need another. I can't use that with now that we have a Prince of Wales. And he said, don't just drop it. Write to the palace and ask if you should drop it. He said, that makes a good story if you get a reaction from the palace on it. Which I did. And so one of the Sundays set up a task to find a new title for me. And there were various suggestions. The one that they liked, that the editor of the paper liked, was the Daffy Taffy. I wasn't so keen, but the one that I felt had a bit more style to it was the Welsh Prince of Laughter. And so it was because of a newspaper challenge that I got the title. But that goes back to '59, I think. Yes, 19. Was it 1959 that he became Prince of Wales? Yeah, I think it was 59. Yeah, 59. I told you, I'm no good at figures.
And you had the honour as well bestowed upon you.
It's another one I couldn't spell.
How did that come about?
Which?
You got your MBE.
My bloody effort.
What an effort.
I had the amazing... Prince Philip is a keen companion water rat. He likes the water rats. I remember him saying at the dinner one evening, we had dinner in the lodge and he was there. He said, I like being with the water rats. I like being with entertainers who entertain each other. And I thought, that is a very shrewd assessment. It's so right. But I'd never heard it expressed. But he said, we must do a reception. You're going to be 150 soon as an order. We must do a reception in the palace one evening. And so we put on this wonderful privilege being in the palace. And at the time, the King Rat was, what's his name, Simmons, Keith Simmons. Lovely, lovely fella, lovely, a great pal, Keith. And Keith was organizing it with the office of Prince Philip. He was organizing it. And he said, it's going to be in a gallery there, and it's quite a big space. But he said, there's no microphone, so you'll have to make the speech, because they'll hear you. And so, in doing so, I said at one point, the Queen and Prince Philip there, of course. So I had the joy of being able to start speaking by saying, "Your Majesty, Your Royal Highness." It's a nice opening, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I said, in the 150 years history of the Grand Order of Water Rats, no member of this order would in the past have ever visualized that one day we would be entertained here in these, the most magnificent digs. And I thought, she won't know what digs are, but it gets a laugh from all the lads there and their lasses. She won't know I was wrong. She started to laugh when I said that, and she laughed even more when I said, "with the most splendid landlady."
You must have had some digs over the years, though, haven't you?
Oh, yes. These here, I've had these for 80 years.
But in your travelling around, you must have certainly stayed in some strange places.
I've been to Twanky twice. I mentioned Twanky. I've always loved the story. Twanky, Welsh, Rhondda town, mining area, had a theatre, the Empire Twanky at one point. And there was to be a tour of a musical called Goodnight Vienna. And it was booked in to be at Twanky Empire. And the week before, somebody said to the manager, "How do you think Goodnight Vienna will do in Twanky next week?" And he said, "About as well as Goodnight Twanky would do in Vienna."
What are your favourite routines then in pantomime?
One of the joys was always the song sheet at the end, when you had half a dozen kids up on stage that you could talk to. And that provided so many laughs, because you didn't know what they were going to be. In coping with the kids, and some of them were very, very amusing without being aware that they were being amusing. And that the song sheet was always an interesting one.
Did you like the slosh scenes?
No. There was too much preparation for and sorting yourself out afterwards. You had to be in slosh costume for it, and it wasn't. I did a slosh scene a couple of times with Roy Hudd, and Roy loved physical stuff like that. And Roy has been a wonderful, cheerful pal for 56 years. And we worked in pantomime together. He said that I was the butchest mother he ever had. Roy, I had a lot of press asking me on the day that he died for remembrances of him. And one of the best remembrances that I have of Roy and his wonderful ability to laugh at everything, because our friendship was based on laughter, and every contact on the telephone or whether it was written or wherever was always with laughter. He would ring up and he would never start by saying, "Oh, Roy here," or "Is that when?" Or he'd always start straight into a gag. Straight in. He rang up one day, he said, "Oh, this dog that we've got is a lovely dog, but we're having trouble because he's got an ingrowing tail." He said, "You've got to look up his ass to see if he's pleased." Yes. But Roy was in Coronation Street for a while as the undertaker. And they were shooting a scene one morning which was apparently in the undertaker's rest room, whatever it would be called, with a dead body, played by an actor, of course. And while they were filming, Roy had the first of those mini heart attacks that he suffered from, and he collapsed on the floor while they were filming, causing chaos in the production box, until they saw the corpse get up to help him. Now, it wasn't funny at the time, but in latter years he would refer to it and laugh at it so much. Laugh about it. Laughter, the antidote to stress. The psychological safety valve.
Were there any difficulties in pantomime ever?
Daily. Having to change sex twice a day. Try it.
No, did you ever have bad eggs in the companies, or
have what?
Have a bad egg in the company? You know, somebody wasn't quite pulling their weight or trying to bring productions down, or did you ever have a bad pantomime experience?
I have never remembered or concentrated on negatives. I don't remember negatives. I only remember positives. I only want to be positive.
That's a great outlook on life, isn't it? Just in general.
Yes, please. Yes, please. And there are, in life, we are surrounded at present, we've gone through a period in this country of Great Depression. And I keep saying, yes, but it's had one tremendous positive. We've had some beautiful weather. And I prefer to remember the weather than the unfortunate circumstances that we've lived through for the last 6 months in this country. I don't want to know about negatives.
Only the good stuff.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
What's been your highlights then?
My highlight? Talking to you here today.
Thank you, sir. That's
and hearing somebody laugh at last.
Any favourite places or venues you've played?
Favourite theatre? One of my favourite theatres must be the new theatre here in Cardiff. But the Bristol Hippodrome, I think, is one of the loveliest theatres in Britain. It's a splendid theatre. It's a huge stage, etc., and a beautiful auditorium. And I've done 5 pantomimes there. Bristol, lovely theatre. Nottingham is a good theatre town. Nottingham used to have two theatres. One was legit and the other was variety. Now there's only one theatre there, or there is only one of those two theatres left. But Nottingham is a good theatre town. And I've done a number of pantomimes there. The Manchester Palace is a lovely theatre. These are also splendidly made in the style of the greatest theatre creators who knew the value of a curve in a building, because a curve, like a shell, retains sound and sends sound back. And all the best theatres have a gentle curve in them. A curve of the circle, etc., etc., a curve round the boxes, curve round the proscenium arch. The curve, a shell is a classic example. What is that? In America, there is that famous open-air theatre.
Hollywood Bowl.
The Bowl, which is like a shell behind the stage, because it absorbs sound coming in and sends sound back out. A curve is valuable in a theatre, and all the best theatres are curvy, whereas some very modern theatres are all straight lines, and straight lines are clinical. Clinical without the same reception of sound and delivery of sound.
Was the introduction of microphones difficult to get used to?
These days I can get a laugh at a meeting immediately when somebody hands me a mic and I say, no thanks, I was in the business before those things. Now it is essential because audiences are tuned only to electronically reproduced sound. Because of television, radio in the homes, people are tuned into having reproduced sound rather than the normal verbal sound. Yes, it took some getting used to, I think. Certain performers immediately became happy with the microphone and seem to almost swallow them as they use them. No, I'm still happy to be without when necessary, or when possible.
Did it help, though, with the voice, looking after the voice?
Yes, under certain circumstances, yes. If you're playing twice daily, long performances twice daily, etc., yes, it does help. It is, yes, it lessens the wear and tear on the voce.
How did you look after the voice when you were performing?
The greatest help with the voice is honey. Honey and lemon will bring an almost disappeared voice, will bring it right back. A combination of honey and lemon. Honey is very, very valuable to the voice.
Have you ever missed a performance?
No.
You've always kept yourself healthy and fit.
More or less, yes.
How do you cope then with, the winter lurgy and things
Yeah,
like that?
yeah. This is one of the great disadvantages of the time of the year for pantomime, of course. It's winter, and winter is the period of the lurgy. Yeah, true. But there is no, you know what they say, there's no makeup. No. There's no... The quote will come to me in a second. There's no medicine like the makeup. There's... for recreating sound, the makeup helps. In other words, it is psychological.
And the second you stand on the green, that's it.
Yeah. The challenge.
Did it ever seem like a challenge?
Yes, constantly. Almost always a challenge. A performance is almost. People say to me constantly, "You never seem nervous." And I say, "You don't know what goes on underneath." I don't look nervous. But you don't get a tune out of a fiddle unless the strings are taut. And it's exactly the same with the human performer. Unless there is a sense of tension as you're performing, you don't give a performance. A slight sense of that only you feel. You don't make it obvious.
What did you do before performances when you were getting nervous?
Cup of coffee. Yes.
I hear some people pace backwards and forwards, and some people like to be silent before they go on. All these different routines I hear that people do.
Silly buggers. I don't remember anything specific. You just concentrate for a very short while on what you're going to do. But you've been doing it so much that you don't have to rehash it in your mind every day, every performance.
There's a phenomenon people talk about, the Panto blues. Now, I know you don't like to talk about the negatives, but you've had a great season. You've had the winter, celebrations of Christmas and everything like this, and everybody's on a high. And then Panto finishes, and some people feel a little bit down afterwards.
Yes, the anticlimax. Yes, that is true.
Did you ever?
Well, no, you immediately concentrate on what's next, and what's going to be in the diary now, and what you're going to do about it. In the good old days, when we used to run into March and April with pantomimes from December, now they open in December and close in January. This year, they won't do either. Alas. But when you had a long-running pantomime, then you did a summer show that opened in June until the end of September, or in Blackpool, you would open in May until the end of October because of the lights. You had a season, pantomime season, and a summer season like that. It filled in a great deal of the year. It filled in about 7 months of the year. Variety bills filled in some other weeks. I spent a lot of time with radio. because I was told I had the ideal looks and appearance for radio.
And you had your radio series, didn't you, as well?
Oh, I've had several of those. I was once told by a group of ladies that I had the sexiest voice on radio. But Carol was not prepared to believe that. Oh yeah, radio is a companion in the home. Television is an intrusion. Television demands attention. Radio doesn't. It is a companion. Happy background.
What do you find yourself watching or listening to now?
Listening throughout the day to classic FM principally, because you're getting good music in the background all the time, which is glorious. And there is something so satisfying about good music. One of the long series that I did for BBC Wales was Sounds Unforgettable, which was good music. And it was every generation has created good music, but every generation has created rubbish music too. But from every generation has come good music. And I did this long series of Sounds Unforgettable experiences, like discovering, doing a little bit of a chat about composers, etc. at times during the program. I was going to mention Johann Sebastian Bach, who was twice married and had 21 children. And mentioning this 21 children, and I thought, no, the piece I'm going into is Sheep May Safely Graze. I think I better change this introduction.
You've travelled all over the place. Any audiences you found that like different things to others?
Oh yes, north and south, east and west.
There is that divide.
We are much more sharply divided in this country, east and west, than we are north and south. I mean, the people of Cornwall, for instance, have nothing in common with the people of Kent. The people of South Wales, nothing in common with the people of East Anglia. And you can continue that. Lancashire and Yorkshire, two different worlds. Liverpool and Newcastle, different worlds. In Scotland, Glasgow to the west, Edinburgh to the east, two different worlds. We are much more sharply divided east-west than we are north-south. I was very surprised once, having done a long season in Blackpool, twice nightly, and the following week I was in Croydon, and going into the act, straight in, I thought, I got to slow down. And I found that Croydon, outer London, was much slower in picking up on humour than the north. Surprised me, because we think of the south as the sophisticated. Where humour is concerned, They are slower in they laugh, but the laugh takes that millisecond longer before it registers. There's a bit of information that's of absolutely no use to you at all.
It might be used to some people, though, especially the performers who listen. Probably writing notes as we speak. I've never heard, though, of the East-West divide. I've never even thought about that, and it makes perfect sense.
You've never accused me of that before. Making perfect sense. Nobody has ever done that. Yeah.
Any really difficult places to play? Where you really had to fight to get them to laugh?
No, I found that East and West in this country differed. I had a tremendously successful season in Llandudno 1 year, and the following year I went to Scarborough, and I found that much harder. Scarborough was East Yorkshire, Yorkshire audiences, much less wanting to laugh. They did, but it took more effort to get it out of them. But there we are, back on negatives again.
But from that we can try and work out the positives, though, and...
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yes, please. Oh, that's nice and positive.
What would be your advice to the young upcoming dames?
Go and get a proper job. Don't try to be feminine. You are funny by failing to be feminine. That's the advice I was given very early in playing dame, in getting into skirts. A dame gets into skirts. A female impersonator gets into drag. A pantomime dame, is not a female impersonator. A female impersonator gets into drag, and a dame gets into skirts.
How long did it take for the scripts to kind of sink in?
Scripts? What are they?
Did they never give you one? Was it just...
Oh, yes, yes.
On you go.
Yes, it was... it would come, dame entrance, and a sentence, and then own material, it would say on the script.
Did you like that, the free rein you were given?
Oh, yeah. Because you are performing as what you want yourself to be, not what some author wanted you to be. You're performing as you feel the character, and you devise and accumulate your own style, and I don't like to use the word script, it sounds potential, but you devise your own material and adapt it.
You mentioned earlier about getting a proper job. Did you ever have a proper job?
What's that?
One of those things that people have to do and they don't enjoy.
No, thank you. No, I've never been employed other than in entertainment.
Have you never fancied playing a bad character?
Why? What for?
To get the booze.
Why? Oh, I'm a non-drinker. I'm not into the booze.
Kind of booze. Yeah. Have you ever thought, would it be fun to have been a baddie over the years?
Never occurred to me until this moment.
I'm sorry to say it so late on to you. You could have had a career direction. No sort of idea to go out there and be booze.
No, thank you.
No, that would have been nice. I think you would have made a good baddie. No, I do. I really do. I think you would have been a comical baddie.
I like the comical bit. I'm not sure about the baddie bit.
No. It's all very positive, though, isn't it, as well? It's making them laugh and...
Exactly.
Getting them up and just...
And laughter is the loveliest music. And laughter is also the antidote to stress. We lead such stressful lives, and a good laugh helps tremendously. It's the antidote to stress, the psychological safety valve. A good laugh.
Was it difficult making that decision to retire?
Retire? When's that?
Would you still be doing it then?
Happily. It's only this strange situation that we're in the country that has meant that there's nowhere now for me to perform. And I already have dates in the diary for next year.
I mean more pantomime.
Not pantomime, no.
Not pantomime.
No.
Was it a difficult decision, though, to make?
No, I'd been having to cope with pantomime with names and stars being placed with huge billing and no awareness of the genre that is pantomime. And I was getting a bit fed up with that and having to cope with these big names being placed top of the bill without any background, pantomime, etc. I remember on one occasion he had a record at number 1 or 2, etc. So he was a big name, and he's playing one of the leading characters in pantomime. It was Babes in the Wood, and he's playing Robin Hood. And at one point, I remember him saying, "We must find the babes." And pointing to the merry men, he said, "You go to the east and search for them." And the 3 others, "You go to the west and search for them. And you, the others, you go and look for them backstage." Oh dear.
And you didn't like that?
Well, this is the top of the bill. Who didn't know the difference between east, west and backstage? Yeah.
What was it like, though, that first Christmas without Panto?
I haven't missed it. I have looked back, as I think I mentioned earlier, looked back on those years of twice daily performances, 6 days a week, getting to the theatre round about midday and not seeing outside till about almost 11 o'clock at night. 6 days a week, unstopped, and looking back on it, and I thought, it was like being in prison.
A fun prison, though, I'm sure, at times.
Oh, a joy. As for performances, a joy. Yeah. Because, as I have said 3 times once before, so I won't tell you a second time, there is no better music or no greater inspiration than the sound of a theatre full of people, particularly kids, laughing. Deeply impressive.
Over the years, have you made many friends in pantomime?
Oh yes, dozens. Happily, because every pantomime season creates a family. A family of that cast, and you're together so much of the day and so much of the week, etc., that it becomes every pantomime company become a group for that season. So your awareness of friendships, etc., is lasting.
We mentioned earlier on as well, we had a bite to eat, and you said about performing at the Palladium.
Yes.
A real career highlight for yourself.
Yes, it was a joy to stand on that stage and be aware of the auditorium in front of you. That's a great, deeply moving experience. It's quite, yes, deeply moving. It's quite an emotional experience, I think, because that has such history, the Palladium. Though I once had an experience in the Palladium that was nothing to do with the stage. It was at one of the Royal Variety performances, and for years I was on the executive committee of the then Entertainment Artists Benevolent Fund, for which the Royal Variety performance has been done every year. And I was asked, special task, to stay with somebody to keep them in a dressing room out of sight, because they were going to appear in the finale and didn't want anybody else who was going to be on the cast to be aware until she appeared with them, in the middle of them, at the finale. Gracie Fields.
Goodness me.
And so I spent the evening talking to Gracie, etc., and have always remembered her answer when I said, Gracie, out of this amazing career of yours, where you have had such tremendous love and success, etc., have you ever analysed your impact on an audience? And she said, yes, I think I have, love. Command with humility. And I thought, oh, there is great depth in that. Command, she had tremendous command of an audience, but always made an audience feel superior to her in her approach. Command with humility.
And did you strike up a friendship with her?
Yeah. I never saw her again. She went back to Capri, which was very wise when you consider the weather in London.
And your seasons in Blackpool as well. So would you mind telling the story about the two ladies? And I can obviously do a little bleep.
Walking up to the theatre on the Central Pier in Blackpool one day for the 6 o'clock performance, and there were two ladies standing outside the stage door, obviously waiting for some of us to arrive. And they were wearing hats and gloves in August in Blackpool, so you know it's special. And as I approached, they said, "Oh, Mr. Calvin, we was waiting to see you because we come from Merthyr. We're Welsh and we are looking forward to seeing you again," she said, "because we've been 2 times twice already and we're coming again to see the show, and I'll tell you for why. Because you are so clean. You get all those laughs and there's nothing objectionable. There's nothing unpleasant in your humour. There's nothing dirty in what you say. We've been to see all the other shows. We've been to see that Danny LaRude. But we're coming to see your show again tonight," she said, "because it's a fabulous show. Fabulous."
Oh, dear me.
And I laughed so much I nearly fell off the pier. She turned to her friend. She said, "Well, what have I said?" But that's Merthyr in Blackpool.
Have you always preferred a clean pantomime performance?
Oh, in pantomime? Oh, impeccably. Oh, there should be, in pantomime, there should be not the slightest doubtful humour. Not necessary. I love a gag. But as a performer, no. Keep it clean. It lasts better.
Well, this leads me on to my very last question. Your dream pantomime. So you can be in it. You can be in the stalls watching it. You can choose your venue, the production, and your cast can be alive or dead.
Is that a question?
Yes, your dream pantomime cast.
Oh, good gracious. Oh, are you available?
What can I do? I'll take the money.
Yeah, me too.
But no, it's just a silly question I like to finish up on, where you choose your dream panto. So it could be, most people go Cinderella at the Palladium with the most ridiculous of casts, and that's how people.
I think Aladdin has become my favourite because Twanky is the premier pantomime role, I think, for a dame, Widow Twanky. There's so much story behind her. Yes, and it will be here in Cardiff because I like the Cardiff Theatre because I like the digs.
Ah, that's good. They're not bad, are they?
I've experienced some digs in my life. I remember once I was doing a review and arriving in Hull, and the landlady had been in to see the performance on the Monday night. And she said when we got back for our supper, and that was the great thing about theatre digs, you got your supper after the show at night. The landlady said, "Hey, if I'd known you were top of the bill, I'd have given you clean sheets." But it was at Swansea, I think, and staying on the Oystermouth Road in Swansea in digs, and back from the theatre, I thought, think I'll have my bath before I have my supper. And I'm having my bath, and I heard the voice of the landlady outside saying, Mr. Calvin, are you in the bath?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, be careful, I just painted it." And there's nothing you can do except hope to float.
The old enamel paint. How long did it take to get off? But back to your dream panto then. So we're going Aladdin in Cardiff.
Yeah.
And now you just need to choose. Would you be in it?
Oh, yes.
As Widow Twanky, of course.
Of course, yes. Yes. Well, I'm too small for wishy-washy. And you mean a cast?
Yeah, so who would be your Ebenezer, for example? You must have worked with some very good baddies over the years.
Yeah. Trying to remember an Ebenezer, or Abba Banana, as we used to call him. One comes to mind, not immediately. No. Names. I told you about remembering names.
That's true.
I don't know, see, the point is I don't know who's available now.
Ah, right then. They might have busy diaries.
Yes. And who are, these days, good pantomime performers, because I've outlived most of them.
You have, haven't you? They probably started and finished in your lifetime.
Yes. I've seen the start and the finish of a lot of performers. Sudden storms are short. Small showers last long.
And is that how you describe yourself?
I'm grateful to be a small but long-lasting shower.
Well, Win, thank you so much for taking part in the podcast.
Thank you for your patience and for sometimes even listening to my answers.
Thank you so much. Was that okay for you?
Diabolical, thank you.